Good morning, good morning. As Steve said, I'm Simon. I am a sports psychologist and I've been working in elite sport for about 15 years or so. During that time, I have had the enormous pleasure of working with some people who are genuinely world class in their field. World record holders, gold medalists, Olympians, top ranked world players and double championship winning teams, those kind of guys. It's given me a fantastic insight into what makes an athlete or a sports team world class. But over the last 6 or 7 years, I've also been working with businesses, charity sector, education, all sorts of people outside of sport. So it's increased my intrigue as to what makes people world class, what those differentiators are that make people truly world class. And at this juncture, I suppose I ought to explain what I mean by world class. World classness to me is not being famous, and it's not necessarily being wealthy either. I know and have met now quite a few world class people who are neither famous particularly or wealthy. And I've met quite a few people who are famous and they're not world class, and I've met lots of people who are wealthy and they're not world class either. To me, world classness is being in the top handful in the world at what you do in your chosen field. These guys have got external things that tell us that they're world class. Michelin stars, world championships, Olympic appearances, gold medals, things like that. And some people haven't. So from my point of view, I'm really interested to know what differentiates people, what those things are. As a sports psychologist, I want to get underneath the skin. I want to understand how people like these guys think, how they make their decisions, how they feel, how they approach challenges, how they deal with setbacks, how they perceive their world. And what I've noticed is that there are some common things that bind all of these guys. I mean, when I started out on my journey to understand this in more detail, I deliberately sought a group who were very, very diverse. Because my very simple rationale was, if there are things that connect all of these guys, that bind them, common traits, habits, that bind all of these guys, and they do across a diverse range of disciplines. In this room we've got chef, barista, Olympic athlete, adventure racer. I've also interviewed a mountaineer, a US Navy SEAL, CEO of a World Science Organization, polar explorer. So my rationale is, if there are things in all of these guys that are common, they're likely to translate across everybody in all disciplines, or widely anyway. And what I've found from talking and particularly listening to these guys is there are a group of things. There's about 8 or 9 things that these guys do that are common amongst all of them. But they're not necessarily the very, very obvious things that you'd expect. It's not that these guys are driven and nobody else is, or these guys are determined and nobody else is, or these guys are dedicated and nobody else is. There are lots and lots of non-world class people who are all of those things, driven, dedicated and determined to do well. So that's not a differentiator. It's not even, if you read the personal development literature and pick up books at the airport, personal development books, you might imagine that these guys set goals and other people don't. Or these guys set better goals or smarter goals, or they do them more often, or they write them down, or whatever. That's not what I found either. It's not that these guys create lovely vision boards with their goals and dreams and all the things they want to achieve and nobody else does. That's not what I found either. What I found is that the things that separate world-class people, differentiate them, are quite subtle, but incredibly profound. And during the course of today, what we're going to do is explore those and look at those things that separate people, separate these guys from their competitors. Each of these guys has got a slightly different area of bias because they're in different disciplines. So we're going to talk to them about an area that's one of their areas of strength. And over the course of the day, I'm hoping that a picture will start to develop. It might be a little bit like watching Rolf Harris paint a picture. It starts off with a kind of series of lines that you don't quite know what it is, but gradually the picture develops. He does that sort of da-da-da-da-da. Can you tell what it is yet? So over the course of the day, we'll start to see a picture emerge. We'll also have a look into these guys' journeys. They didn't start being world class. They weren't born world class. There was a journey that happened, a process. And it's really interesting to look at that. What we will notice with many of them is that that journey is not straightforward and it's not smooth. That road was not A to B and lovely and smooth. In fact, normally twisty-turny, lots of potholes in it. Pretty arduous, in fact. Usually takes quite a long time. And when we look at what is required to become world class, for me it raises an interesting question. I actually wrote in the book that kind of all this went into, I wrote at the end of one of the chapters, if this is what it takes to become world class, you have to ask yourself, do I want to do it? Do I actually want to be world class? And there actually has to be a bloody good reason why you would go through that journey and put yourself through all the stuff it takes to become world class. So then I start, as a sports psychologist, thinking, well, what's that reason? Why would people do it? Why would businesses like you guys want to push yourself through time, effort, energy, expense, resource in order to do that? And as I'm thinking about it, I actually reflected on the launch article that was in the journal for this conference. And Steve, I haven't told him this yet, there are 2 words at the beginning of Steve's piece which struck a chord with me. 2 words, competitive advantage. That's probably a pretty good reason to become world class. As I look at the world now, I see that average equals vulnerable these days. Size is no guarantee of success. It's no guarantee of survival, to be honest. So if we want to be more than average, and actually most people, most companies, most businesses now actually play on a much wider stage than they've ever done before. Probably not regional, maybe national, maybe international, maybe global. I know as a sole trader, practitioner, I actually trade on a global basis now. I sell lots of stuff to America, wherever. It's not just, from my point of view, it's not good enough to be better than my immediate next door neighbour anymore. So what if I'm the best in the street? Doesn't make any difference, really. What if I'm the best in the city? Doesn't make any difference either, really. I need to be better on a much, much wider basis. And as people are talking about becoming better, becoming different, I often hear the words innovation, and people think of innovation as being different than. I look at innovation slightly differently. I look at how the greatest sports teams in history have innovated. They don't tend to do much that's different. They do things that are better. Innovation and differentiation for them simply is being better. I'll look at the great All Black teams of history. They weren't particularly different. They didn't do different things. They did the same things, but they did them a lot better. So, for me, the idea of being world class and pushing yourself to be world class has to be underpinned by a reason. Those are good reasons for me. They're good reasons, I think, for businesses. I think they represent a very sound strategy. So, today we'll be looking at those things. Having worked in the field of elite sport for 15 or so years, I thought I knew quite a bit about what differentiated world-class people. And a year or so ago, I started talking and, more importantly, listening to these guys. And I learnt an enormous amount, more than I ever thought was possible, from listening to these guys. And I also gained an enormous amount of inspiration from them. Today, I've been excited about today for months and months and months, primarily because I know how big an opportunity this, what a phenomenal opportunity it is for you guys. And when Justin from Muckle and myself were talking about a venue, and he said, oh, the live theatre, it's intimate, it's close, it's personal. From my point of view, I thought, that's fantastic, that's exactly what we want, it's ideal. Because it gives you guys proximity to these guys. There's coffee breaks, there's lunch, there's a chance to shake their hand, talk to them, ask them the questions. You know, you were in the same room. I know how valuable it's been for me. And if you guys can gain just a tiny portion of that, it'll be incredibly valuable for you as well. With that all in mind, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker of the day. Steve's already described Chris's enormous achievements. Yes, he has been a double Olympian and a double Commonwealth gold medalist and won a bronze medal in the World Championships and I think in the European Championships as well. And finished his career 7th fastest in history in his event. In my book, that qualifies as world class. Chris is also a very, very wonderful bloke and a very good friend of mine, so please help me welcome Mr. Chris Cook.